My name is Vivian Taylor, and I am a senior at Cambridge High School. If you don't know me, here are a couple quick facts. I have 3 siblings, 2 sisters and 1 brother. I have a crazy dog named Penny. I have really bad vision and honestly cannot see the back of the room right now. I love drawing and doing calligraphy type stuff. I'm not the best at math, and I am lactose intolerant, which is really sad because chocolate milkshakes from Chick-fil-A are probably my favorite thing ever. Also, if you haven't noticed yet, I am very tall. I always have been. I cannot remember a single time when I wasn't taller than everyone in my class, including the guys. And I actually have a picture from a class in my elementary school. And as you can see, I'm the tallest one in the back row with my favorite plaid vest ever. But then if you look 2 people to the right, you can see Valeria Mendoza. Looks like she's getting a mugshot taken. And then if you look down, there's Jackson Wakefield. And as we talked about last week, he's obviously still in his fat phase in that picture. I was always in the back row of any picture. And I tell you all this because it actually plays a role into the first time that I went to church here. In 7th grade, my best friend Svenja invited me to church. And even though I grew up in a non-Christian home, I didn't have a ton of friends at the time, so I saw this as an opportunity to make new friends. And so, of course, I said yes. However, when I came here, I just felt awkward. If you know me, you know that I have the worst memory ever. Like, I can't even remember what I had for dinner last night. Was it broccoli? Was it pasta? Was it mac and cheese? Well, it wasn't mac and cheese because I'm lactose intolerant. But I cannot remember much from that night except for the fact that because I was so tall, I stuck out so much during worship. And if you go somewhere for the first time, sticking out is the last thing that you want to do. I didn't know when to raise my hand, or honestly, like, what the heck, what does that even mean to raise your hand? So I didn't come back. My name is Vivian Taylor, and that was my yearbook. I'm just kidding, guys. Obviously, I came back, but it took a couple years. However, before we move on, something else happened in middle school around 7th and 8th grade. I started to notice that I wasn't as happy or as positive as my friends around me. And it wasn't much later that I was on my way to my first therapist appointment. Almost immediately, my therapist diagnosed me with depression. Also, not much after that, I was put on medication to help my symptoms. Following this, I began regular appointments with my therapist. And again, really bad memory, so that's about all I remember from middle school. Fast forward to freshman year. Svenja was still my very close friend and stayed consistent with inviting me to church. On October 7th of my freshman year, I went back to church and had a completely different experience. My small group leaders, Angela Cole and Karen Brandon, welcomed me with open arms. I felt like for the first time, I had a place that I belonged. And before we continue, I just want to point out that I am someone who did not enjoy church for the first time. But I am also someone who needed a second and a third and even a fourth invitation to church. Inviting someone to church can change someone's life. So keep inviting. Don't be discouraged when they don't come for the first time. Because like me, people are searching for a place to belong. Anyways, after I started regularly going to church, I became super involved really fast. I fell in love with this place. I attended my first pageantry in 2016, and it changed my life forever. During worship on the last night, I accepted Jesus. They were playing No Longer Slaves, and it really spoke into my life. I knew in that moment that I was not meant to be a slave to my fear and to my depression, but that I was a child of God. I broke down in tears, and it was one of the best moments of my life. That night, I accepted Jesus as my Savior. Following pause on May 15th, 2016, I got baptized, which today is actually the 3-year anniversary of my baptism. Pretty cool. I was able to tell the whole world that I believe that Jesus died for me, and it was a really special moment for me. And so after that, everything was perfect, and now I followed Jesus with my whole heart, and I'm never sad. Life is actually really good, and I never go through anything bad. LOL. I wish. You see, when people accept Christ and start the adventure of following him, they forget that we can't expect everything to be perfect and easy. We can expect life to be better with Jesus, but we are still going to go through trials. Also, When we take major steps like baptism to grow in relationship with Jesus, the devil will see that and try to attack. He will see how good we are doing and try to tear us down. He even did that to Jesus himself. After Jesus got baptized, he spent 40 days in the wilderness being tempted by Satan. And I experienced this realization firsthand about 5 months after getting baptized. You see, I accepted Christ as my Savior, but that's all I saw him as. I didn't think of him as anything more, which is exactly what I needed as my depression grew worse. As I entered my sophomore year, I began to struggle a lot. And there's one particular day that I would like to share with you all. August 14th, 2016. It was a Sunday, and on this Sunday, a group of friends and I decided to go hang out at a friend's house after church. And before I continue, you all need some background. My grade sophomore year had a big problem with exclusion. The particular group that I was with that Sunday definitely played a big role in it, and I did too. It is not something that I'm proud of, but it happened. And when it did, I would always tend to blame myself. Whether it was 100% my fault or not, I put all the blame on myself. So, back to that day. My small group didn't invite some people, and it really hurt their feelings. There was some drama that followed that, and of course, I blamed myself for excluding people and hurting my friends. This was the first thing that happened. Next, I found out that this guy that I liked didn't like me back and actually liked one of my friends. And I know you must be thinking, oh, come on, Vivian, you're sad over a boy. And I agree with you. It's dumb. But for me, it meant a little more when guys didn't like me back. You see, my whole life, I've never been really confident in myself. It grew to the point where I looked in the mirror and I hated everything that I saw. I hated how I looked, my height, my weight, how I talked, my smile and my laugh, everything. So when a guy didn't like me back, it almost reinforced those thoughts in my mind. So after all this had happened, I went home and immediately became very sad. I didn't think I had anyone to talk to, and I started rethinking everything that had happened earlier that day and even things that I had done wrong in the past. Thoughts and lies started to fill my mind, and after an hour of deciding what I should do, I decided that I was done. I didn't want to die, but I was so tired of being sad all the time. Depression is an exhausting disease. I'd been suffering from it for a couple years, and I was just done. I decided that I would give up. So, I wasn't supposed to cry. I grabbed my phone, and I texted my friends, "I'm so sorry, I love you all, goodbye." And I went to my bathroom. I grabbed my medicine, and I argued with myself for a little on whether or not I should do it, but eventually I did. I overdosed on my medication. Little did I know that at the same time I was doing this, my phone was blowing up from my friends obviously and understandably freaking out. It didn't take long before I heard a knock at the door, and it was Svenja sobbing with her parents by her side. My mom answered the door, and she said that she would come check up on me. She came upstairs, and I was still conscious, so I told her what I had done, and she immediately said, "Let's go." My whole family was there, so she had to explain why we were leaving and where we were going, but it didn't take long before we were on the way to the hospital. Before I continue, I want to share my first statement of many. This night, I realized that Jesus is my protector. Something really bad could have happened to me that night, but instead, I had the angel armies of God surrounding me to protect me that night. That night, I had a plan to end my life, but God had a plan to show me that my life is worth protecting. And students, I need you to know that your life is worth protecting and that God is fighting for you as well. We made it to the emergency room, and doctors kept coming in and out. I will never forget the police officer outside my room who could not believe what I had just done at only 15 years old. And honestly, I couldn't believe it either. I couldn't sleep. I got to the hospital at probably 7 p.m. and stayed awake till 7 a.m. when a social worker came in to tell us the plan of action. She explained that in about an hour, I would be transported by ambulance to a behavioral institution. By law, I had to be there for 72 hours, and I wasn't able to see anyone. None of my friends, and I could only see my family during visiting hours on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. I was also only given one phone call every night to a family member only. All I wanted in that moment was to see my friends and lay in my own bed. Hopefully, you can understand why I was so anxious and honestly scared of how the next 72 hours would go. After we arrived and had meetings with different people, I said goodbye to my mom and walked into my home for the next 3 days. No one in there was allowed to wear shorts, and I was wearing shorts at the time. Because of this and the fact that I was a new face, everyone was staring at me. There were teenage girls and boys in this area of the facility. One girl came and sat near me because she was in trouble, and she freaked me out. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I really hope she's not my roommate. And of course, it only took a good hour for me to find out that she was going to be a roommate. And later that day, I found out that she was not only suicidal, but homicidal. And for those of you who don't know, someone who is homicidal is someone who is capable of murder. So that was great. So you can imagine how terrified I was. In the room, I wasn't able to have much with me. I couldn't have my phone, I couldn't have pens, I couldn't have anything sharp, but I could have my Bible. And this actually sparked conversations between me and my roommate. She had been to church a couple times and believed in God, but didn't have that stronger relationship with him. Nonetheless, I was able to speak some life into her and share that there's so much more for her out there. I told her that there's so much that God has planned for her life. I even encouraged her to go home and talk to her mother to try and figure this out before making another rash decision. I do believe that she understood and received what I said. However, I have no contact with her and have no idea where she is or if she's even alive. But I am fully confident that Jesus used me to have an impact on her life. And even though I can't see her or talk to her, I know that I can keep praying for her. Being in there was scary. Scary things happened, and I was constantly anxious. But through it all, I learned something. I learned that Jesus is my peace. When I realized that I had to be in there by myself for a whole week, I was terrified. But Jesus turned to me and said, I am your peace, and he calmed me. When I found out that the scariest girl in there was going to my roommate, I wanted to cry. But Jesus turned to me and said, I am your peace, and he calmed me. I encourage you all tonight to remember that Jesus gives us peace. In John 14:27, it says, peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. The first time I read that verse, I broke down in tears. It is such a beautiful reminder. Following that week, I definitely pretended that everything was okay. Mentally, I was doing really good. God had given me a realization of how much a gift life is. However, what had just happened to me was a big deal and was not okay. And I want to tell you all tonight that it is okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way. And I'm sure you all have heard that before, but I see people forgetting it so many times. Never forget that. As I mentioned before, I was mentally doing really good. Actually, following that week, I had a pretty great year. I know it sounds crazy, but it's mainly due to the fact that God changed and worked in me so much from that week. Not only did he show me how much of a gift life is, but he also had to humble me to ask for help. Before that week, and even still, I felt like I could just do everything on my own. I felt like I didn't need to ask for help. Whether it was because I didn't want to burden my friends or because I didn't think they could help, I didn't ask for help. But I'm here to tell you all tonight that first, you are not a burden, ever. And you cannot be the only person to be helping you. If there's someone in your life who you feel comfortable talking to, then they are there in your life because God placed them there to help you. So ask for help because we all need each other. So it was in this season that I learned that Jesus is my peace. It was good to learn that Jesus is my peace before my life took a turn towards chaos. Ever since I was little, I cannot remember a time when I saw my parents truly love each other. I could always tell that divorce was on the horizon, but I always thought that would happen after me and my little brother left for college. However, it happened earlier than I thought. In the summer between my sophomore and junior year of high school, they sat all of us down and explained that they were getting a divorce. Even though I had been expecting this for so long, I still completely broke down in tears when they told us. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was going to happen. There was so much uncertainty to the nearby future. But through the uncertainty and the chaos, I realized yet another thing about Jesus. I learned that Jesus is my comforter. Whenever I'm going through something, whether good or bad, he is there to hold my hand and walk with me through it. He is there to remind me of the hope found in Jesus and to remind me that everything is going to be okay. Jesus comforted me in this time by reminding me that even though my home may be broken, my God is not. That no matter what happens at home, I have a home in heaven that is so much better than anything I could ever imagine. Following the divorce, I actually had a pretty good year. I know it may sound weird, but as mentioned before, I had a new realization on things and just felt happy. It was a good year, but halfway through my junior year is where things started to go back down. I started to lose sight on how much a gift life was. I wasn't reading my Bible, and I wasn't leaning on God, my peace, my protector, and my comforter. I stopped seeing God as those things again. My depression started to take a hold on my life. It was in this season that I learned the importance of keeping my eyes fixed on Jesus in all circumstances. So that brings me to senior year. To add to my struggles, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Said every senior ever. I honestly didn't think that God had a purpose for my life. I thought that I was just here to live a short life and die a tragic death. And I know that sounds really intense, but it is truly what I was feeling. It wasn't until my senior year that I started to fully grasp the concept that he has a plan for my life. For my whole life, I had no idea what I wanted to do or who I wanted to be. I would constantly go from one area of interest to the next. But God showed me that there is so much waiting for me in my future. Before senior year, I heard of an opportunity to see what it would look like to work in ministry, which was the internship here at Stone Creek. Choosing to be an intern has got to be one of the best decisions I have ever made. And while working here, I started to think and talk to people more about what I should do in college and after college. The conversation began with the topics of psychology and forensic anthropology and religion. But the conversation ended with religion. Through the internship, I learned that one of my passions in life is serving people, sharing Jesus, and leading the people around me through the local church. For me, I developed a passion to pursue working in the church for my career. But it's more than a career. This past year, I have felt such an enormous calling on my life to go into ministry. I never really had a huge moment that told me that, but one day someone asked me, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, with full confidence, ministry. However, there's more to this story. See, the fact that I had never had a moment scared me. I started to wonder if I had made all this up in my head or if God was truly calling me to go into ministry. My head started to fill with all these doubts and questions about my future that I thought that I had already answered. One night, I was texting Sean Curry about this, and I explained how I'd been feeling and my doubts. And of course, all he responds with is, "Vivian, can I be honest with you?" And on text, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, yes, of course." But in my mind, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, no," because they're going to say I shouldn't go into ministry, and then I'm just going to cry for years. But it ended out okay because his next text was, "Vivian, you are made for ministry." And I'm not sure why, but in this next moment, I blinked, and so much became clear. See, my whole life, I had believed this lie that I had no plan or purpose for my future, that there is no reason for me to even exist. But after reading that text, I began to grasp the concept that God has a purpose for my life. And I'm sure some of you may be wondering, like, "Well, Vivian, Sean isn't God, like, calm down, it was just a text." And I don't blame you. But I learned something very important in a mentor meeting with Joe Baker. He told me that God can speak to us through many ways, and one in particular can be that he speaks to you through other people. If you aren't feeling beautiful one day, and someone looks to you and says, "You are so beautiful," there's a good chance that God is trying to remind you of how beautiful you are to him. If you mess something up at school and think you are a failure, and someone says, "I think you did an amazing job," You are not a failure. There's a good chance that God is trying to remind you that you are a loved child of God, and that even if we mess up, we have a perfect Father to look towards and lean on. And when Sean told me that I was made for ministry, there's a good chance that God was trying to tell me not to worry about my future, to not listen to the lies and the doubts circling my mind, but to listen to God and to trust in his plan and that he has a plan for my life. And I understand that not all of you will want to work in ministry, but I do understand that no matter what, God has a plan for you. Whether you end up as a CEO of a tech company or a math teacher at a local middle school, or even as a McDonald's drive-thru worker, he will use you for great things. Through the internship, I learned that Jesus is my creator. In Colossians 1:16, it says, "For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him." And when I say Jesus is my creator, I don't only mean he created me. I mean, when he created me, he also created my future. He created a plan for my life. He created a purpose for my life. And that applies to everyone in this room. He has a purpose and a plan for your life. You are not a mistake. You are alive for a reason. Hear that and believe it. Also, in my senior year, I decided to spend my last spring break in Guatemala on a mission trip. This is going to my third time going, and I could not wait. I was so excited. This past year's trip was probably my favorite. We were able to connect more with each other, with the people there, and with God. And God taught me so much this week. And the most important thing that I learned that I wanted to share with you all is what it means to rely on him for my joy. See, before that trip, I was desperate for joy, obviously. But what I wasn't desperate for was his spirit and his presence. And if Jesus is the provider of my joy, why wouldn't I be desperate for him? Why wouldn't I be desperate for the only person who can provide me with joy? Students tonight, I'm telling you, be desperate for Jesus. Be desperate for his presence. When I started to become desperate for his presence, I started to feel more joy. My most joyful moments are moments with God or with godly people. And this is because my joy is found in Jesus. It's like if you want to stay warm. You will want to stay by a fire or a source of heat because it will provide you with warmth. And if I want to experience joy and satisfaction, I will want to stay close to the source of it and the provider of it, Jesus. Jesus is my provider. My brain does not provide me with enough of the chemical that makes a person happy. But God didn't just let me go on like that. No. He looked at me directly and said, "Vivian, my daughter, I will provide you the joy that you need. Your joy comes from me and is in me." And in those times that I don't feel joy are not because God isn't giving me joy, but because I'm not looking towards God for my joy. In the moments that I don't feel joy, I'm looking towards something else to get it. I'm looking towards guys or other people's approval. In the moments that I don't feel joy, I'm letting the devil come in and take it when I should be letting God come in and give it. I challenge you all tonight to let God in. Let God into your life to work the miracles that he is more than capable of completing. So I want to wrap up tonight with a challenge. My challenge for you all is to be with people and be there for people. You can't do it alone. You can't fight sin in secret. You can't fight depression in the dark. You can't fight anxiety alone. You need people with you. Whether that's your family or people here or friends at school, God designed us to be in community from the very beginning. Lean on people and lean on God. But also to the people out there who could not relate to my story at all, and you have never struggled with mental illness, this still applies to you. People like me need people like you to be there for us. We need you to support us and distract us when we're having a bad day. I am so grateful for the people in my life who have supported me on my bad days. Thank you to my friends, my small group, my family, Joe, Sean, the whole Wake staff, and the whole staff here at Stone Creek. Thank you for constantly caring for me and encouraging me. No matter who you are, fight to be in community. Fight for relationship. Throughout my story, I saw God in so many new ways. I saw him as, yes, my protector, my peace, my provider, and my comforter, but I also saw him as my healer, my friend, my rock, and my strength. And it wasn't until I saw him as all these things that I started to see him work in my life. Jesus is all of these things to me, and he can be for you as well. Tonight, I encourage you all to think to yourself, who is Jesus to me? Is he everything? Is he just the big guy in the sky? Is he nothing? Whatever he is to you, hear me on this. When you start to see Jesus as all of these things, there will not be a single situation in your life that he can't handle. There will not be anything that will stand against his plans for you. God is big, but he's also personal and relational. Through writing this, one of my hopes and prayers is that my story can connect to your story, and that I can point you to a greater story that God has for you. Students, please, do not give up. Believe me, I know and I understand how hard life can be sometimes. I know how hard it is to believe that there is more out there in life for you. But as I continue to fight, I'm asking that you continue to fight with me. When you feel like you can't make it through the day, think about all that God has for you the next day. Whether you're in a season of weeping right now or a season of joy, God is with you. And if you lean into him, he will show you the purpose for your life. My name is Vivian Taylor, and this is my yearbook.